Okay, 30-second board, hot topics in the sport as always, although also this week we will give you some that are not so hot. I do like this move, though. We're going to start with the audible from the Liqui Moly Beta team. The year couldn't have started out worse. Benny Bloss gets hurt on press day at Anaheim 1, and then Mitchell Oldenburg gets hurt at round 2 at San Diego. So then the rumor mill starts, the fill-in stuff, which is always complicated. I like how the team actually made fun of it with their own video. Maybe Zach Osborne, the brand ambassador, is he going to race? Some of their off-road riders, can they race Supercross? Instead, they're just going to punt all the way till May and instead race Pro Motocross, which they were not scheduled to do. Here's Benny Bloss himself on Race Day Live to explain it.
Yeah, so he came to me and he was like, I talked to him earlier this week and he was like, what do you think about, we just do all of outdoors instead, get healthy, come in prepared, get a lot of time on the bike. And so obviously I was all for it. I think it's really cool because, we're pretty much Supercross only, we don't do outdoors. I think it's pretty crazy and cool that the team is cool enough to be like, you know what, let's just switch the plan. It's different, and
softens the blow a bit.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I love about Beta. It's, it's just, I don't know, I'm just stoked.
Okay, JT, you know how the merry-go-round works on replacement riders and how difficult that is. So I think this is a smooth move to just keep their regular 2 riders on the track. What do you think?
No, I think this is the right plan. And they didn't have any great options. They wanted to go racing Monster Energy Supercross. That doesn't seem like it's in the cards. So you pivot and you go pro motocross racing. And when I start to think about the playoffs, and remember, Benny Bloss raced some pro motocross rounds kind of on his own to try to gain eligibility for those playoffs. And you just do the math. You look at 17 Monster Energy Supercross rounds, which them both qualifying and scoring points is no given, versus 22 opportunities, 11 rounds, 2 motos per round to score points for the same playoffs. This gives them a better chance on paper. They're going to go heal up. Both of them have arm injuries, which are not catastrophic. They'll be riding sometime, I would guess, in March, and they'll be prepared when we go racing in May. So you try to find a silver lining when the worst things happen to you. Getting a full summer of racing and also having momentum when they show up to Columbus in September is one of the things you just look to and say, hey, maybe there's some good that can come out of this.
One thing that made me laugh, though, yes, Benny is great outdoors. He's flirted with podiums in the 450 class. He was probably fist pumping, knowing he's going to get a shot at this, because if they just hired a replacement in Supercross, that's not helping Benny and Freckle. But on the other end, Mitchell Oldenburg is not an outdoor guy. He had not even raced one until he had to sneak in a few last year since 2016. So it's the hot and not of the 2 teammates and how this strategy is going to go. And that will bring us to our next topic. Let's talk 250 class, hot and not through the West in the first 3 rounds. I think, obviously, Hayden Deegan, that one's a given. But Michael Mosiman is up to second in points, led a whole bunch of laps. I thought for a moment, is he going to win Anaheim 2? And then Ryder DeFrancesco, 2 out of 3 rounds on the podium. So those guys obviously have to be pretty happy.
They do. And Deegan seemed like a shoo-in to be on the hot list. But the other 2, Mosiman and Ryder D, you don't want to say they came out of nowhere because they're on factory 250s and they do have expectations to perform. But they were not the storylines coming into this thing. And to say that, Mosiman has been on the podium twice and Ryder D's been on the podium 2 out of 3, I did not have that on my 2026 bingo card. So kudos to them for, I think, overcoming adversity, making sure that they are there to take advantage of opportunity wherever it may show up. And for them to be on this list, I think it says a lot about the work they put in, maybe a little bit more on the quiet side than some of the what we considered contenders going into A1.
Well, on the not list are 2 riders that know that probably better than anyone. And that's Chance Hymas and Levi Kitchen, who are all-time rivals of Deegan. And we thought maybe rivals of Deegan for the title, for race wins this year. And again, hard luck has struck. I'm going to start with Hymas here. And this is terrible because this is 100% not his fault. Just a routine first-turn crash. Avery Long high sides into him. He sticks his arm out, dislocates his shoulder. Honda said he's probably out at least these next 3 weeks before West takes a break. He did nothing wrong here. And there you go, Chance Hymas.
Yeah, I would say that more than one thing can be true here. They can be, on a pure performance level, the biggest rivals to Hayden Deegan's dominance. Like, they can pose the biggest threat on a week-to-week basis. And they can also have proven that they cannot be consistent enough to be a real threat for the championship. And that is where we are coming to. And it really, for Kitchen, hasn't been since 2024 when he took RJ Hampshire all the way to the checkered flag for that championship. He really hasn't shown in any championship that he can be relevant and consistent enough. And for Hymas, it's been these flashes of brilliance. He'll go out and dominate a weekend. He'll show that he is the fastest guy. And then unfortunately, 2 weeks later, he's sidelined by injury. And these themes are becoming consistent. And you have to wonder, let's go back to the press conference where Hayden was perturbed at people saying that they were threats to him, or they should be compared to him when he had won 5 championships and they had won 0. I hate to say he was right, but I understand his sentiment. Those guys are nowhere near him in the points now, just 3 rounds in.
Yeah, Kitchen should be okay. Hurt his arm. By the time he got back to the truck, probably halfway through or by the end of the 250 main, he realized he's probably not hurt that badly. So he should be back for Houston. But again, Hymas probably not going to see him this weekend. And the good news kept rolling for the Monster Energy Yamaha Star Racing team. So we get to talk to the SMX Next kids Friday morning before their races, the entire broadcast crews, just so we can learn their story, get familiar with some of the newer riders on the scene. But you had made the point, JT, that this year's group, our riders, we already know pretty well. And we kind of figured that Caden Dudney and Gordon and Menier would be good. And that's exactly what they did. They sweep the podium.
Yeah, it's interesting to see, early on in the formative years of, but when it was Futures and then transitioned into this great SMX Next program, it just seemed like we had a lot of turnover and we didn't really get to learn their stories until they had become full-fledged professional racers. Well, now it seems like they're in their own world and series against each other for a couple years now, and we're getting to watch the storylines, watch their development, how they race each other a little bit. And you have to give a lot of credit to Monster Star Yamaha because they've been so aggressive on the recruitment side, and they are reaping the rewards both in the SMX Next class and then as they graduate into the professional class as well. And this was more of the same. They really dominated this event, and I really felt like Dudney had a chance to win. With that unfortunate red flag situation with Ryder Malinowski, it seemed like Dudney might have been able to run away with that thing. But overall, this team, this Monster Star Yamaha team, has really dominated this SMX Next race kind of for a few races now.
So the women's team, Team USA for the FIM Oceania Cup has been announced. What a difference a year makes, right? So we did mention this on the show last year, but a lot of the people listening to the names of the women's Team USA were probably like, well, who is that? Now, after a year of WMX in America, these are household names. So Team USA, Christina Denny will be the team manager again. You got Lala Turner, Jordan Jarvis, Jamie Astudillo, and just turning pro now is Mela Herrick. She said she's going to race WMX this summer as well. That's Team USA going to race in Australia. It was kind of the first time we had heard a lot of these names on the radar last year. Now we all know who they are, JT.
No, and for me, it's a prelude to what we're going to see this summer in the WMX Championship, but it also offers a little bit more because we get to see them square off with some of the MXGP women's riders that they typically don't. Names like Chiara Fontanesi, lots of Van Drunen, sometimes they will show up and take part of these races. So you get the women that we're used to, the Charlie Cannons, Lala Turner, which that is, in and of itself is going to be great to see who's developed a little bit more in the offseason. But this came down to literally like a last lap battle to win this championship last year. I'm telling you right now, if we lose again, I'm texting KK Nielsen, Parker Ross, just bear with me. I'm texting KK Nielsen and saying, where were you? Because she's not on the starting list and she could be the difference in this championship. So, the flag-wearing American that I am, I'm cheering for them, but I'm hoping that KK Nielsen's absence is not the difference.
Yeah, I'm not sure. She races off-road too. She might have a schedule conflict. I'm not sure what the reason is. Obviously, getting riders to go all the way down to Australia is quite difficult and pricey. So we'll see. They're going to let it ride on the shoulders that they got. And that should really be interesting now that the world will be watching. And that's a women's racing down in Australia. And then a completely different scenario back in America. And the women will be racing on one of these tracks. Today, the track maps were unveiled. Tickets are on sale for the SMX playoff rounds in September. That's Ohio, California, and Missouri. JT, you've now got to see a little look at the tracks. What do you think of these playoff rounds?
Well, those first 2 rounds are going to be in MLS stadiums. So you think about a similar setup to what we see in San Diego, Snapdragon Stadium. The track itself, though, feels very St. Louis-ish to me. A lot of Supercross components, tighter confines, but a little bit more open and a little bit faster than what we would see, say, in Houston this coming weekend. So think about St. Louis. I believe that's going to be the conditions that we see at the first 2. Now that last race, the one in Ridgedale, right outside of Branson, that one is going to look a lot more like Las Vegas. It is a little bit smaller of an area, so a little bit less speed, I think, which the riders will probably be happy about, but different types of terrain, different types of obstacles, a little bit more open. It's going to feel like it has the hybrid motocross aspect of this more than the first rounds do.
Yeah, the info today said that's going to have some natural elevation and more motocross-like situation, and that even includes the spectating. So what you probably can't tell from the track map is that this is a natural amphitheater. The grass section that the fans are in, that has elevation to it. That's to get better views of the concert stage if you were there for a show, but it will also provide better views of the racetrack. I think in places like High Point and the long gone Steel City track had that layout with the grass field looking down on the track. So that's probably going to be good for the fans. We'll have more as we get closer to September, how these tracks are going to turn out. But good to have at least a visual of what the playoff venues will be like. Let's go back to the now, which is Monster Energy Supercross 450 class, hot and not. Obviously, you got to put Sexton and Tomac, the race winners, on there. But I want to give a nod to 2 others. Hunter Lawrence, coulda, shoulda, man. He was close to Tomac last week. Sexton this week, he's riding really well. He's up to 2nd in points. And Jorge Prado, okay, he's not in the title picture. He's not in the, is he going to win a race picture? But he is so much better than anyone, I think, anticipated. And with a Triple Crown in his starts, I don't know, he could do some damage this weekend.
He sure could. And I love that you mentioned Prado in this, because when I think about a Triple Crown and what certain riders do well, and I'm going to throw some other names in there that aren't necessarily maybe deserving to be in the hot, but I think they will be when we push forward to Houston. I'm going to add Ken Roczen and Jason Anderson into those, because what do they do well? They get great starts and they run near the front for the first half of the race. Well, guess what? Triple Crowns really reward getting a great start and running up front for the first half of the race. So if you told me that those guys are in podium contention all evening long in Houston, I would be like, yeah, that really pencils out as to what this race will be like. And I just think it presents opportunity for a different podium than we've seen through 3 rounds. So Roczen, I don't think is a shock. It was really the crash that kept him out of podium contention anyway. But I'm looking for a guy like Roczen to maybe grab that first win of the season, because this race is going to lean into his strengths.
That would be exciting if Kenny could get one and get a few points back that he lost at Anaheim. Let's talk about that top 3 there. That's pretty much where they are in points, also between Tomac, Sexton, and Hunter. How pivotal a round is this? Are we already into they're all going to have their goods and bads and we'll see where the points are in a couple of months? Or is it still everyone trying to get confidence and momentum over each other, and each race matters for that?
Yeah, I think, if you're trying to gauge an entire season off of January, I would say buyer beware on that. But we are learning who is going to be a real player and who's not. And the guy that jumps off the page to me that I had the most questions about is a guy you mentioned in Hunter Lawrence, because we've seen him be at the front. We've seen him fight for championships in other disciplines, but for him to do it in Monster Energy Supercross is a new dynamic. And yes, you could say small sample size. He was always going to be there, but I want to see it. I'm always wanting to, show it to me when you're talking about beating guys like Tomac and Roczen and Cooper Webb and Sexton. I need to see it before I'm going to buy in. I'm there now with Hunter Lawrence. So barring injury, barring catastrophe, I think we're seeing what we're going to get from Hunter Lawrence, and what we're getting is fantastic.
And he's an unbelievable starter on that Honda as well. That's not going to hurt with 3 shorter races in the Triple Crown. Now we're going to go to not hot. And there is no way before we got to Anaheim 1, we thought Cooper Webb would be on this list, but he's the first name that comes to mind. No podiums, 24 points back. And what's even stranger, he has not ridden that badly. It's actually the racecraft stuff which is normally his asset, those are the things that have worked against him. This is so puzzling.
It is, and if you want to draw the ire of Cooper Webb, maybe mention this is a historically bad start to a season for a defending champion. And then maybe duck, and then maybe run. But it is deceiving, to your point. The riding has been better than what the results would dictate. Now, the points don't care. And a guy like Eli Tomac could be like, that's great, but I'm starting to run away with the points, right? So it can't just be you're riding really well, because that's not what Cooper Webb cares about. If you told him like, hey, you're riding so well, he'd be like, yeah, well, I've almost ridden myself out of this championship being 24 points down. So we talked about last weekend, and I thought Ricky Carmichael made a great point of how pivotal it was for him to turn the tide at A2. I think he did on a riding level, but on the result scale, on the points, he's got to start swinging this thing back the other way. And to his credit, he's been great at Triple Crowns. He's going to have to really make the most of it against the most successful Triple Crown rider of all time, Eli Tomac.
Yeah, by the way, Webb did say in the SMX Insider post-race show that might have been the nail in his championship coffin. After that, he clarified he thought he was down more than 30 points when he took the checkered flag. He said now that he found it as 24, it's still not good, but not as bad as you might have thought when you heard that interview if you're watching at home. It's even worse for his teammate Justin Cooper, and you've said it 1,000 times on this show. Justin Cooper is start dependent. Guess what? Starts have been terrible. Results haven't been very good either.
This is really strange. We're talking about one of the most proficient starters ever in the sport, and he just simply cannot get off the gate the way he wants to. And I know how he operates and how that team operates. They're leaving no stone unturned, changing everything. We know they went back to Florida, an unscheduled test trip, purely to work on the starts. You have to think that with his talent and the capability of that team and the motorcycle, that they're going to figure this thing out. The question is, how much damage do you do in the interim until you figure it out? And I think the results will come around, because he overcame with 2-6 in the first 2 rounds. But that 10th is indicative of what a bad start will do to you in this class.
One more rider, unfortunately, on this list is Aaron Plessinger. Now, look, we're just glad the Cowboy is going to be okay to race in Houston, because that could have been so bad, the heat race crash. But it's been like a Cooper Webb light start to the year for him. The riding has been okay at times, but everything else is not working out at all for AP.
No, this is eerily similar to his January last year. He just couldn't seem to do anything right. It wasn't for lack of trying. It wasn't that he was unprepared. It wasn't that he was just too slow. It was all of the strangeness that racing can bring. And case in point, that crash in the heat race, I still am not 100% sure what happened, and I don't think he was either. And those are the most challenging and the scariest aspects for riders, is when you crash and you don't see it coming whatsoever. Most crashes are, they're kind of easy to read. Like, riders can see them coming. They see the signs. They're like, uh-oh, I'm in trouble here. It's that old cartoon where I'm in danger. That's typically how riders react to these. That was out of nowhere. You could see by his position. That's why he was so far over the front, is because he expected to just scrub that jump and move on. So not really sure what the kind of the fix is for AP, other than just getting more reps, right? It's like a batter who's in a slump. The only way to fix it is just get back in there and keep swinging the bat. And a la 2025, like Daytona, where he really broke out, I think he will find his way out of this slump.
All right. Again, it's a Triple Crown this weekend in Houston. JT, here's the place where it's going to take place, and that is this track. Take us through it.
Well, we haven't been here in 3 years, so it's going to be a good time to get back to Houston. But the question I have, I know I'm here to give answers, but the question I have is, what is the dirt like? Because we've had this big winter storm come through that everybody's been talking about. Is there moisture that's going to be in the dirt? Is it going to be softer than what it has been over the years? So that's the one thing I'll be looking for, because that can change what happens on the racetrack. There are big rhythms on this racetrack that, with consistent hard dirt, riders may be able to pull off, but if it's soft and if it gets really ruddy, you're going to see more conservative approaches to these rhythm sections. Look at those whoops there. There's a pretty big run-in after that flat corner. So the guys that are wanting to blitz, they're going to be able to do it with speed. Watch for how do Justin Cooper and Cooper Webb approach that. Do they try to find a solution, or do they just have to blitz like the rest of the field. And then that start is very similar to last week, kind of cuts diagonally and then a long left-hand 180. So I think it's going to be a great racetrack. Just the one unanswerable question at this point is what kind of conditions do we get inside NRG Stadium?
I love the Triple Crown early in the year like this. I think Glendale was the first one last year in a similar point of the schedule, because I've always said this, between rounds 3 and 5, a lot of riders still believe this is theirs. They're a lot more dialed in and less nervous than they were at the first 2 rounds. And then you throw that in with the unpredictable Triple Crown format. You just mentioned a whole bunch of guys that can run fast for 10 to 15 minutes that also probably think this is my shot. This is going to be crazy this weekend.
It is. I look for the guys we haven't talked about enough. The Jason Andersons. Think about if Justin Cooper sorted out his starts the way he's been riding. Cooper Webb is overdue. Ken Roxon has been arguably the fastest guy on multiple weekends this year and doesn't have a win. So if you told me we had a shakeup at the very top, I wouldn't be shocked, simply because some are due and the change in format.
Right. So it would be easy in a normal situation to be like, oh, Sexton and Tomac are the 2 guys that have won races. It's starting to boil down to them. Absolutely not. We could name half a dozen others that could win this weekend on top of those 2. How awesome is that? So you definitely want to watch. If you're in the Houston area, anywhere nearby, come on down. It's a great and big stadium there in Houston. And as you said, haven't raced there in a couple of years. So come join us or watch the broadcast. Race Day Live qualifying coverage kicks it off at 1 o'clock Eastern, and the racing begins at 7 Eastern. Peacock, everything live in the U.S. There's also the Spanish language broadcast option on Peacock now this year. And if you're outside the United States, sign up for the SMX Video Pass, because this has been a great start to the season, but I almost think the best is yet to come. All these riders building momentum. We mentioned Hunter Lawrence, Jorge Prado, Sexton getting a win, Webb. He's in a must situation here. This is going to be awesome going to Houston.
Hi folks, Lee Diffie from NBC Sports. If you enjoyed what you just watched, well, it's time to bring the action and subscribe to the Motorsports on NBC YouTube channel. You can have it all: news, highlights, interviews, and analysis. So go for it.